All right, guys, this is going to be the 4.1 video. The first two pages of this are kind of like an activity, so I'm kind of just going to skip over those for right now. We can kind of talk about them in class, but take a chance once you get a chance. Just kind of read through this, um, and we're going to do this thing in class where we're going to pick 5 words, and then we're going to see how long they are and find the average length, and then go from there. So, kind of read through this. If you could do this 5 words, that'd be great. Kind of just look at that. Again, more activities, so we'll kind of talk about those. So these are the actual notes here. 4.1 starts on the third page. Like I said in class, this is going to be the least math heavy out of the units, but it's going to be the one that requires most vocabulary. So, like I said, make sure you're looking at the Quizlets, using those as some help to learn some of these vocab words. But you're going to see we're not going to do a lot of math in this unit. So, with that being said, let's get this started. So the first question is, what is the difference between a population and a sample? What is a census? So we're in a census year right now, which is kind of cool. That kind of ties it all together. But first of all, so a population is the entire group of individuals we want information about. So for example, Dexter High School, everyone in Dexter High School would be a population of all Dexter High School people. And a census collects data from every individual in the population. Okay. This is expensive. So the reason why we only do these things once every 10 years is because to get information on everyone takes a lot of time, takes a lot of effort. Plus there's a lot of like data sorting and stuff like that. So it's really expensive. So that's why we only do it once every 10 years. A sample is a subset of individuals from the population in which we want to collect data from. Okay, so if you want to think about this as a Venn diagram or some circles, right? So this is your population. Okay, and then your inside one would be your sample. So this is S, this is your sample, this is your population on the outside. Right. The reason why we use samples is because it's a lot easier to get a hold of a sample than it is to get everyone in the population. So now we're going to look at a couple of different ways to sample badly. Okay, so these are going to probably be the cheapest of all the options, but it's also the one that's going to lead to the most biased results. So convenience sampling is a form of bad sampling. A convenience sample is one where you choose individuals from the population who are easy to reach. So for example, this would be like if I asked AP Stats students, right? That would be really easy. It's a convenient sample for me. And so now what happens when you have these poor sampling techniques, you get to something called bias. And a bias is if the design of a study consistently underestimates or consistently overestimates the value you want to know. So an example of this was if we're taking that same AP Stats students as my convenient sample, okay, and I was looking at GPA, for example, right? AP Stat students, you guys are going to have higher GPAs. We're going to overestimate the true GPA of Dexter High School as a whole because you guys are AP students. Okay, so that would be a form of bias. What is voluntary response? It's kind of in the name. A volunteer response consists of people who choose themselves by responding to a general invitation. Okay, this is like when you call into a radio show. All right, what's wrong with this? Right, this is a bad form. This is a bad sampling technique because the only people that are going to respond are going to be the ones that care. So if you think about, like, let's say we did a survey on people who the food in the school cafeteria, right? If you don't buy the food in the cafeteria, so you bring a lunch every day, then you're not going to care. So you're going to have a lot of bias in the sample. So this question, the next question is going to look at like there are forms of bad sampling, and then they can lead to a lot of mistakes, lead to a lot of bias. So kind of definitely take a look at this question, and we can go through that in class if we need to. Okay. So to estimate the proportion of families that support budget cuts to the athletic department, the principal sent out surveys to the families that enter the football stadium on Friday night. Explain how this will lead to bias, right? So for this one, I want you to just think about it. And think about the type of people that are going to be attending football games on a Friday night. Do you think they care about athletics or not? Okay, let's see if you can come up with an answer for this. And again, we can go through this in more detail if we have to. Okay, so now we're going to transition a little bit and talk about good sampling techniques. So these are called random sampling. The reason why we do random sampling is because we want to have a representation of our population, okay, within our sample. So that's why it's really important to determine what your population is and what your sample is going to be, right? So, for example, if you use like Dexter community, even Washtenaw community, or Washtenaw County, sorry, that's going to be a poor sample, even if we were to random sample of the state of Michigan or the United States as a whole, right? Because Washtenaw County is fairly affluent, pretty high educated, and has pretty high income. So compared to the rest of the nation, it's not going to be a representative sample. So the whole point of random sampling is to get that representation. And so one of the ways we can do that is with this method called SRS, or simple random sampling. And so technical definition is an SRS of size n. So that's your sample size. So say you take 50 people, n would be 50. Is chosen in such a way that every group of n individuals in the population have an equal chance of being selected. Okay. Easiest way to think about this is just number everyone, right? And then take a random number generator to select your participants. Okay, table D is a little confusing. I kind of want to work through this one together. So we'll leave this in class. Make sure we go through that. Okay. Last couple of things for this video. What's the difference between sampling with replacement and sampling without replacement? So you have two different things here. So when you sample with replacement, It means that you can put the individual back in. And this is going to also lead into an idea that we're going to talk about in the next chapter, which is going to be probability. But that's, again, coming up. Once a subject is selected, it is returned back to the sample. Okay. And so what that means is the probability of selecting remains the same. So if you have 50 people, there's a 1 out of 50 chance you get selected, right? And if you go back in, then that's going to stay the same. But if you take that person out, then there's only 49 people left to select from. So that leads to sampling without replacement. Which is once a subject is, that's supposed to be a once. Once a subject is selected, that unit or that subject will not be placed back in the sample, meaning that the probability of selecting changes. Okay. And then again, this is going back to that mall question up above. We'll talk about those two questions in detail during class. Okay, so that's the basics of sampling for right now. We'll kind of talk in more detail in the next video. That's just kind of getting you started. If you guys have any questions, as always, let me know. Have a great rest of your day.